Welcome to the Action Shooting Show. Tonight we have three-fourths of the team together. So we're going to do a after-action report on the, not 2022, but the Heartbreak, 2025 Heartbreak Run and Gun. I have Mr. Mike Ford with me, Mr. Mark Rebke, and myself, Ryan Dixon. So I think we're just going to jump into it. Mike, why don't you share the flavor, the match flavor on this?
All right. Heartbreak is a match that we've all enjoyed for a while now. This was one of the first matches that Mark Robke and I ventured out and checked out in the run and gun space that was not at Rockcastle Shooting Center back in the day when that place was just a huge epicenter for action shooting in the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana area.
Rest in peace.
Yep. So Heartbreak is really cool because it's at the Bluegrass Sportsman's Club outside of Lexington. So the terrain there is a lot of rolling, flowing hills, creek beds, brush, everything you'd expect in rural Kentucky. The shooting challenges are very doable, but still very sporty. They'll have you doing a lot of moving, doing a lot of gun handling type things that you'll need to be able to get in and out of positions and hike over bore, things like that. And then it's a very physical match. And it's physical because of a couple factors. The terrain, which, it's going to be tough. It's Kentucky. They've got a legitimate obstacle course. Unlike pretty much every other running gun that I've done, where maybe there'll be like a prop or they'll have something out on the course that you're going to do. No, it's a legitimate obstacle course. It's permanent. It's a fixture of the facility, and so you're going to be on it. And I believe it's really only utilized for Heartbreak. So you'll see some things return every year, variations of things, and then they've got 4 classes in Heartbreak. Got to pull that thumb down. 4 classes in Heartbreak, and it's really cool because they've got their traditional light. They've got a light plus, which is light plus physical challenges. They've got Heartbreak, which is their heavy class, or ruck division, and then they've got a Heartbreak plus where the men come and play, and that's got the weight and the physical challenges. So the flavor is great shooting, good stages, good physical challenges, really set up for people that maybe you can just hike the course, or hey, maybe you're some CrossFit Ranger, American badass, and you want to come and throw down. There's a class for everyone, and so that's a really, really cool match that they put on. So that's kind of the flavor of Heartbreak. It's cool, taking place at the end of February because it's the Midwest in Kentucky. You might be running it in shorts, or you might be freezing your butt off with snow on the ground. And so you just never know what you're going to get. So hopefully that's the lead in you're looking for.
Yep. And so to add to that plus, and we'll talk about each plus challenge as we get to the stages, because 2 of the 3 of us are real men and did the plus challenge. And but the other thing is that obstacle course, typically for the main divisions, your normal divisions, you go half of it, you go shoot a stage, you do the other half, you shoot another stage. For the plus divisions, whether it's Heartbreak or Light Plus, you do the obstacle course all the way through, shoot a stage, do it all the way through again. So when we get to the obstacle course, we'll go over try to remember some of the stuff. There's a lot to it. They added a little bit more this year, and it was definitely a challenge. Division or gear-wise, it is like most run and guns, run what you brung. You got to start with it. You got to end with it. Carry however much ammo you want. If you want to shoot the thing with a 24-inch AR with a 5x25 scope and a heavy pistol, like you shoot whatever you want. You want to shoot it with a small light gun, shoot it with that. They don't care. You just got to be successful with it. So anything to add before we move on to the beginning of the match and the first stage?
Oh, the weather. You want to start with? We should mention that, I think.
Yeah, RO day was started off. There's still a lot of snow on the ground. Still very, very cold. By the end of the day, it warmed up a little bit, but I mean, it was still not much above freezing. And as has been the case for a year or two now, Competitors' Day got warmer, got definitely muddier. And I mean, by warmer, what were the highs? 45 maybe? Did it get up to 40, 45? I mean,
Mark's
you're
muted.
When we
muted.
stepped off on Friday, it was 17, and I think it got just above 30 when we were done. And then on Competitor Day, I think it was in the 20s when they stepped off, and maybe touched 40 when they got done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it definitely got
Yeah.
warmer. It got nice. But the beginning of the day, I mean, we started a fire in one of the burn barrels because it was cold enough that we definitely wanted to have a fire going. So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it got to 35. It probably just got to 40 by the end, but it was still a pretty chilly day for a chunk of it. So all right. So plus, if you're doing the plus divisions, before you even left, they gave you like a 30 caliber ammo can to carry this around, which was awesome. Had to carry that the whole match, figure out a way to do it. I shoved it in my ruck, but I had my ruck pretty small, and that's a lot more volume. It wasn't a lot of weight. It's really the whole thing about it was just annoying. If you're doing Heartbreak Plus, you've already got a ruck, so at least you got something to do with it. The guys who didn't have rucks, they had to carry it around the whole time. So I saw them just carrying around in their hand. But you take off. The course was a little bit different this year. Kind of went through some grass, went down a road, and your very first stage was the long range stage. So in the past, that's been later. The couple years before this, I think we ended up doing it like second or third. It was like kind of early in the match, but this was the first time that I've shot this, that it was the very first stage. So Bluegrass typically has a stage similar to this. They have a pretty set known distance course. They have a 100-yard berm, a 200-yard berm, and a 300-yard berm. So this year you had 3 different positions. I'm trying to remember what it was, 18 hits. And that was was there 2 targets at each position? And then there's 3 positions.
Yep.
So
2
the first
100, 2 at 200, and 2 at 300.
Yep. And you started with like a VTAC-ish barricade on your far left. Then you moved to a hedgehog, so like a World War II looking tank trap hedgehog. And then the third position, do you guys remember what the third position was?
It was like
some
a
other kind of
slant, 2 like 1x1s or whatever that were screwed at kind of a slant type angle, and
yes.
from like one post to another post. So it's just kind of a strange height. Depending on how tall you were, you might want to favor one side over the other. And there was rules about you had to be touching the barricades when you were shooting.
Yeah. I will say that everything was position wise, it wasn't hard. I was able to reverse kneel on all of it, which if you can't go prone, reverse kneel on a barricade's probably one of your second best, most stable positions. So I'll make it quick. My shooting, I cleared it. This is the first time I've ever cleared a Heartbreak long range stage. It seems like every year something happens that prevents me from kind of completing that. This year I went through more ammo than I would have liked to, but I completed it, and it wasn't too terribly difficult. Mark or Mike, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so Heartbreak is one of those that's kind of deceptively challenging when it comes to the long range. We're seeing more matches, like Guardian back in the day had like, a 450 or 500, like Hunter's Moon, you'll see out to maybe 1,000 with your own gun, but definitely out to 400 or 500 on different stages. Legion's gone out to 5,600 now, year after year. So 300. Oh, that, that's not too bad. We saw that in some of the early days of Rock Castle east of the Mississippi. But coming off of your first run portion, it's harder than you think it is. I see a lot of folks that are generally good shooters normally struggle with that stage. And generally, the first stage of the match is a little bit more challenging. You're trying to rein yourself in. You're trying to manage your expectations at the same time as your all your adrenaline, everything just spiked, and so you're kind of at your first high heart rate. So a lot of people end up struggling to rein it all in or find a good position. I know generally long range for me is someplace I kind of move towards the top 5 shooters, and I think I was like 5th this year. So not my strongest long range finish, but yeah, I did the reverse kneel myself and just trying to get the bone on bone contact and then brace off the object that was available. I had looked and considered prone, but when I was looking at the way the targets were laid out, at least from the first position, I didn't think you would be able to see the second target array, or at least one of the targets on the second target array if you were proned out. So I went for the kneeling and then stuck with that, and still had a respectable time. Went through more ammo than I would have liked, but at the same time was able to pull it off. So no big complaints there.
Yeah, it didn't work like that for me. It didn't work like that for a lot of us ROs. So there was a sort of a competitive equity issue where the steel at 300 was very, very heavy. And so people that were using slow, light reloads, or just, I think it was an angle issue, because like the first position, I had no problem with any of the targets. And then the second position, I was shooting 300, and I was more calm in the second position than I was in the first position, and I could not connect. But I was connecting, and there was an issue that the steel was too heavy, so they weren't seeing the hits and they weren't hearing the hits, and so they ended up putting on a flasher. I think up till Ryan was the first RO to clear it. There was like 5 of us that shot it before him, and we were all stuck on the same targets because they just could not see the hits happening. And so I think later in the afternoon they put flashers on it, and that solved the problem. So helped everybody out after that. So I did not pass that stage. I only got halfway through.
That's a good argument for a quiet can. And I say that only half jokingly because even with my 12.5, my Thunder Beast is very, very quiet. I know from personally ROing, when there's not this like loud concussion, like a 3-port break blasting me, I find hit calls easier to make because I'm like, you really hear that smack. Your ear isn't trying to adjust from a real loud to a real quiet. If you got headphones or whatever, I find it easier to call. So I wouldn't be surprised if that played into a little bit because I was shooting 55 grain. They're factory loads, but 55 grain with a 12.5. So it's not like my rounds were just screaming down there, hot 77s or something like that. So anything else before we move on?
Yeah, I'll just say that's a good thing for a can. The downside is sometimes ROs, especially inexperienced ones, have a hard time picking up those last shots. I've had to do a reshoot in 2 different matches because of a suppressor, but at the same time, when the steel is ringing, it's a lot easier to self-advocate and say, not only am I seeing my impacts, I am hearing them, and to be able to really try to get the ROs to understand, like, I am connecting. So, and there was a little bit of a kerfluffle in mine, because I was shooting right to left, and apparently either I moved and they were expecting me to shoot a different side or something. So luckily they were able to hear my impacts, and so they knew I was shooting even though they were looking at the wrong target. I think that happened at like the 200 yards. But yeah, heavy steel. That's just a little note. Match directors, consider shooting your long range steel before RO day. Just get some impacts on it and see what it does. But that's all I got for that stage.
Yep, and I'm not a massive fan of flashers, but honestly, they are helpful, and anything over like 100 yards should probably, or even 100 yards or over, depends on the size of the steel and how easy it is to call. But with how cheap flashers have gotten, with like the, I think
Caldwell,
180
like what,
makes
30 bucks?
Caldwell, yeah, a couple of them make some real $20, $30. It's probably worth buying. Plus challenge here was 20 push-ups. It was slick. You didn't have to put on, your ruck or anything.
What?
It was. Did you do it with your ruck on?
Yes, I was told to do it with my ruck on.
Well, that is your penance for skipping a bunch of them last year because they didn't
I
remind. They didn't
skip 'em.
remind you.
They didn't tell me to do them. I didn't know there was a challenge there.
There always is a challenge. There's a challenge at all of them, and it has been that way. But regardless, we're also starting. I'm starting a drinking game right now. Anytime Mike Ford mentions the word kerfluffle, because that is not the first time he has said that on this show, I want you guys to drink a beer, a whole beer. And if you're not a beer drinker, that's a good 3 shots or of whiskey or vodka or whatever your choice is. Malort, if you're a masochist, like most of us probably are on this listening to this. So yeah, that's what we need. You need to drink a beer and eat a sleeve of Peeps every time Mike Ford says kerfluffle. So moving on. I moved on. I lost my way. I was early on. As happened to be, seems to be a tradition now, where I find I go just far enough past a new piece of tape to find an old section of tape in the woods, and I continue off following tape the whole time, way past where I'm supposed to be. So
you should note though, everyone at home, there's 3 to 4 inches of fluffy snow with only 4 sets of tracks ahead of you, blazing the trail the whole way.
I found tracks.
Yeah, but that's, again, you weren't following the main tracks that there's a clear path.
But here's what ended up happening. Right where I lost it, the path took a hard 90, but then there was tracks still going forward from one other person, our friend Daniel Arterburn, and then apparently someone went ahead a little bit on those same path to take down that tape that he saw and made tracks there and back, so it looked like a lot more. So regardless, I got off track. But
what this
stage 2
is Ryan can be walking through the woods and be like, "Ooh, hey, look at this wildflower." But if you ask him to see the correct tape for a path or to find a steel silhouette hidden in the woods, he's not going to see it.
There is too much truth to that, but I apologize for nothing. So you basically, where you're supposed to go was down the hill into a bunch of their pistol bays. This stage tends to be later on the match, but they kind of did the course a little different this year. And this area, they usually do a 2-bay stage. This was no different. Mike, do you want to describe it so I'm not talking the whole time?
Yeah, sure. So this was, I believe it was maybe an unloaded rifle start. And so they had a VTAC set up with 2 target arrays, and you had to use 2 different ports to engage them.
No, 1 port for each target.
1 port for each target.
Yeah, 1 port for each target. Sorry
without
about that.
repeating. Yeah, without repeating a port.
So.
And the inside ports to specify before we go on.
Inside ports on the VTAC. Yeah. And so 1 target array was probably closer to between like 15 to 20 yards from you. And then the other one was probably closer to like 25 feet. So you need to do your unloaded start, engage each of the throoms that were hanging. And I believe it was essentially 6 hits total that way. And then you're going to safe ground your rifle, run over, grab something, carry it to another part of a bay, drop it, and then you are going to and all they told you is there's 12 targets, shoot them as you see them. And so they had walls blacked out so you couldn't see through, and there were some random openings in it. But it wasn't like they didn't give you that in the stage brief in such a way that like it made a lot of sense. Like you run up and you're looking through the first port and you're like, yeah, there's not enough targets here. It was chaotic by design, is what the ROs that were stationed at that stage told me. So once I go in and I shoot everything and realize like there's just nothing there, then I just start running down the wall and there's like 1 or 2 targets here, 3 targets here, 1 target here. And so that stage for me, I had a kind of a weird situation where when I dropped the bolt, apparently it was either in battery enough that the hammer would fall, but it didn't detonate, or I had a bad primer. I have noticed that I've had two fully dimpled primers on these Winchester 41s that I've been using. It's the Winchester military primer. Good strikes, no detonation. So it could have been that too. Ryan saw one the other night while we were at the range. And so for whatever reason, I had to do strip the mag, rack, put mag back in. So what might have been a stage win, looking at like the 2 seconds I was off the leader, probably got lost to there. But ran the VTAC on the throoms clean with a little 12.5 and LPVO on top, and then shot the pistol pretty clean once I realized what the presentation was going to be like. So, yep, fun stage, classic kind of heartbreak. You're going to have to deal with some height over bore and work some sort of problem out on the fly, whether it's a stage or something else. So I'll pass it to the next guy.
Yeah, that was a fun stage. That was my closest to catching Mike. I think I was 90% of Mike on that one, and so I shot that pretty clean too. And yeah, it was fun. It was a good stage. It was a sandbag that you had to carry from one bay to the other, so maybe 30 pounds, something like that.
Yeah, and I don't have anything to add. I mean, the only real hard part on the throom stage is when you get to those lower, like you had to use at least 2 of the lower ports on the VTAC. Those can be kind of difficult, especially when you're shooting at an upward angle, trying to get your eye back, get things in your cannon a little bit. Yeah, and you got to use the horizontal port, which again, you got to know. Now it's not just height over bore, but it's height over bore and offset. So that was a little challenging, but not too bad if you've done it before. And for those who maybe don't know, the saying is mag side high. So whichever way your magazine's facing, that's the way you're cheating it, and then high, because you don't have that height over bore now. The other side, pretty straightforward. Just see them as you shoot them. It's probably worth counting when they say there's 12 targets and you only see 2 in the first window or 3. It's probably worth counting to make sure when you get to that last window that you shot all of them. But it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Only argument to that is if you count 11, it's probably better just to eat the 10 seconds or whatever that target's going to be. The chance of you going back and finding that specific one. Now with run and gun, because it's going to be a 180 plus whatever that penalty was, then
if you shot it really fast, yeah,
right, you might have the opportunity, but still, that is a really tough.
Well, but because it's run and gun, the worst that can happen is you just run back until you hit 180, and you're not any worse for wear.
See, I don't think they told me. I don't think they told me there's 12. And the way it was laid out, it was lateral, all left to right. So you just shot everything in each window, and by the time you get to the last window, you didn't hit it all. Like, I don't know what you would find on the second pass that you hadn't already shot. Like, there'd be no way to keep track of all that. So just shoot them as you see them.
Yeah.
Go fast, don't miss.
Yeah. So this one, the plus challenge, you had, they've used this before. You've got, think if you take a 5-gallon bucket and you fill it with concrete, you put an eye hook in it, and then you remove the bucket. That's what you got. You got a big 55-gallon. I think in the past, we did the math on it. It's probably 60 pounds or something like that of concrete with a little eye hook. And you just had to somehow pick it up and move it 20 feet or 20, 30 feet and then bring it back. Not crazy difficult. I use my little daisy chain, try to use that to hold it. I don't know if I would do that again. It probably would have been easier just to pick it up and hold it. But sometimes those daisy chains do come in handy for moving stuff like that. So something to consider. So from there, you kind of head up in the woods, and this was right when you went into the lower area, correct?
So 2 going into 3, you end up going out through a grassy field area. You've got your first cache item that you need to find out on that loop. And it was one of those things that I had mentally keyed in on red, because the way they had hidden the bucket with the cache items was kind of like tucked into the center of this cluster of like honeysuckle or like Russian olive. And so the shape of the bucket was broken up because it's in the center of this massive cluster of like 1 to 3 inch diameter like branches. And so it wasn't super duper obvious. I think people blew right by it, but I got keyed in a little bit by the red tape, and then just kind of the ellipse of the top of the bucket didn't match the things it was sitting in. But so it wasn't a give me, so to speak, but at the same time, it was not the hardest ones to find out there. And so that was the first thing, and then you're going to end up doing some traipsing through the woods, and I believe, I can't remember if you went over the wall on that leg or not. Mm-hmm. And then you would eventually end up popping out down at stage 3.
So we didn't mention, there was cache items out there. You weren't told how many, but you had to find things during the run. And if you didn't find those, each one you missed was a 30-minute penalty on your run time. And so you weren't told how many there were, and they were supposed to be marked with red tape, and then the trail was marked with yellow tape. And so that was like a golf ball or a pickleball or something like that. Just a little plastic ball was the first item.
And Mike, you want to go? I completely forget what stage 3 is. Is this? Oh no, I don't.
It's a plate rack.
This was yeah, you shot a plate rack with pistol. You had a high value, so drop your mag, shoot at a target, holster, so your gun is empty, you're holstering. Run all the way over to the next bay, and they had a tire that you had to stand on. So you had to shoot 2 throoms, I think, from standing on the tire, so nothing touching the ground, kneeling or seated, and prone. So six hits, 2 from each of those different positions, and then you ran back and you do the pistol part again.
It was 9, actually. There's 3 throoms.
Was it 9? Oh, yep. 3 throoms. Okay.
There's 2 3-inch and a 2-inch at 25 yards.
So yeah, the plate rack and the pistol, there's really nothing to say about that. Shoot the plate rack, shoot the pistol, stop plate. I saw some different ways. I actually, when I stood on the tire, my feet were inside the tire, like on what would be the inside of it, but basically touching the ground. and I just stood there like that. That seemed to work out. That was pretty stable. Seated, you just kind of have to get on there and get your, get in a position. Again, you're kind of worried about height over bore. Wasn't easy, but wasn't ridiculously hard. I mean, I've done that a couple times at other matches. And then prone's kind of actually surprisingly one of the harder because it's really hard. You're like laying across this tire, maybe a little bit to one side. Your feet are usually hanging off the back, but you're trying to not touch the ground. Again, I've done similar stuff like that. It's not the easiest way to get a good position, but it's certainly possible. Mike, what do you, or Mark? Yeah, you can.
So I RO'd that stage, and there's a couple things that I want to talk about if we're trying to help newer shooters. One, people don't practice offhand small targets at 25 yards, so that'd be a good thing to practice. Smallish targets like 3-inch and 2-inch. Two, and you guys probably saw this on your stages, the way people make ready, or not even make ready, but show up to a position and need to load a rifle, just blows my mind all the different ways I see people do it. Is there like some sort of military procedure or cop procedure that says when you need to load your rifle, lock the bolt back, put the mag in, and then drop the bolt? Because a lot of people did that, and it is definitely slower than just putting in the mag in and racking the charging handle. I don't know if you guys know of some SOP that dictates that. You're muted, Ryan.
That's how I would do it off the clock. On the clock, I just slam it in there and, give it a tug as, you slam it and you kind of give it a tug as you're taking your hand off and then just rack the bolt. I mean, I guess for consistency, maybe I could see that. I mean, sometimes it's hard to, I don't think that's the case, but I could see someone arguing that, doing it the same way all the time. I don't know that that's a good argument. If you've got 30 rounds in your magazines, sometimes they're a little harder, but slam that thing in there with some force and they'll see, If you're, I've never done that
because that doesn't mimic any reload that you're really going to do. Whether you're starting with an unloaded gun. Now, gamer, if the gun's staged someplace, or like I'll try to have my bolt lock back if it's an unloaded start at the beginning of a stage, but stuff gets your bolt release can get depressed against your chest rig or your gear. I think that's just a pretty classic case of people getting flustered, and they're not thinking about the most efficient way to run it. They're just thinking in like, oh, I need to get this back. And okay, I need to keep it back. And people just kind of go caveman, and you'll see them do some really weird loading procedures when it comes to on-the-clock loading of rifles. So, yeah, folks, if you can, as Ryan said, if your bolt's closed, even if mine is locked to the rear, I can slam it home, and I can let the bolt home with the charging handle. Or if the bolt closed while I was running, I can run the bolt with the charging handle. It's a pretty foolproof thing to do. And the other thing that we see a ton ROing and in matches is people go over, they stand into position. Now that I'm standing here, I'm going to grab a mag out of my kit, get it in the gun. Folks, while you're running, pull out a mag, get it ready while you've got your cold gun. So as you come into a position, you're already starting to feed it in. As soon as you can get in the position where you can safely load the gun by the stage design, you're starting to feed the gun. You want to make it hot as soon as you safely can. That'll depend on your stage and your maybe footfall areas, but try to have a clear understanding. In that stage, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, I already had the mag in my hand as I was coming in, so I stood onto the tire and was putting the mag in as I was standing onto the tire, and probably about the time my feet were in the final position was about the time that I was ready to start sending rounds.
Yeah, and pay attention there. Mike said he's got it. He's getting his feet on the tire, then he's loading it. So this is where you kind of have to pay attention to what you're doing. Safety is still important. Mike didn't load the rifle as he's running. He didn't load the rifle and then try to climb up onto a rickety tire, because now you got a loaded gun and you may be real wobbly. But he was ready to load as soon as he was in a safe position.
Right. The mag in the gun is not going to send a round down range. So as I'm standing up onto the tire, I can see the mag in. But until I know I'm not going to fall off, I'm not going to put a round in the chamber.
Yeah. It's again, we harp on this. You can go faster or whatever, but you can't go faster than you can do something safely. That really fast is a bad. I don't want to say it's a bad word, but the people who are finishing stages the quickest aren't doing things faster all the time. They're doing them sooner. And that may not be readily apparent. It's a lot more apparent in things like run and gun. I was never the fastest shooter. Like 3-gun is a better example of it. I was never the fastest shooter in run and gun, but I could do things quicker than other people. So getting the gun loaded quicker is a way to finish a stage faster, as Mike's saying. You're already ready to load it. If I stop, grab my magazine, load, pull my bolt back, load it, do this, do that. Next thing you know, like now I got to shoot really fast because I'm 5 seconds behind Mike, who was already prepared for it. You come into a stage, you got to show the RO an empty rifle. Well, if I'm going to show him an empty rifle, I'm just going to lock the bolt back. Unless there's some environmental thing that makes me think that I'm going to, not want to get my gun muddy or something like that. But even then, you can put the charging handle up or the ejection port cover up if you're worried about, mud egress or something like that. But this is the common stuff we see. People aren't ready to load their guns. Their scope caps are still up. They're not taking their scope caps up. They're not. Their red dot lights. Red dot optics not on. Whatever.
If these you are the things. Have a load make ready procedure that you've ingrained into yourself that you're going to execute before every stage. Check your magnification, your scope caps, your illumination. Make sure that the magazine you're going to pull out is full, and that's your first start mags are full. You would not believe how many people we watch shoot 5 or 10 rounds, go to bolt lock, slide stop, and now before they've had a movement or any opportunity to do a reload on the fly in the stage where it makes sense, they're forced to do a standing emergency reload. Your pre-flight checks that happen at your load and make ready are so important. And even matches that let you run with hot guns, you can do a post-flight check before you leave the stage. When they say, finish, unload, show clear, or if you're running a hot pistol, if finish, you can holster up, ask the RO, can I do an admin reload? And then you can do the administration, put in a fresh mag, put it in the holster. Set yourself up for success. That is how the people are landing at the top of the podium, is they're generally setting themselves up for success. If you ask Andres Cedro, if you ask John Stoner, if you ask these guys that are consistently winning, Mike Smith, they generally are doing things to set themselves up for success at the beginning of the stage, and then maybe when they go leave to head to the next one, they're doing some admin stuff. Don't do it in the middle of the stage. Time is too precious to do it there. End of rant.
Yep, and I would argue a lot of the stuff that you can safely do, like when I'm coming up to a stage, I'm already locking my bolt back. I'm flipping my scope caps off. I'll look at my magnification, and if I have any kind of hint of what kind of stage it is, I'm putting it where I want. And if I don't know, I may put it to 1.5 or 2. I got a second or first focal plane. I can shoot a lot of stages on 1.5 to 2. And then if for some reason it's a stage where they don't give you a lot of make ready, you just got to get going. Well, at least now my gun is like really prep. We had one at Legion last year that you put your gun in a rack, they sat you in a room, you didn't really have a make ready on that. They pushed a wall down on top of you, you grabbed your gun and you started. The gun was already ready, bolt was locked back, scope caps were off. I was on it was a bay stage. Okay, well, guess what? If I'm in a 25-yard bay, my scope doesn't need to be on 8 power. Probably only needs to be on, like I said, 1.5. So it's there, they're ready to go. Yeah, that's all stuff that'll set you up for success.
Yeah, so that brings up another thing I want to talk about on this one, because it's offhand rifle at 25 yards and people over magnify, and magnification's great. You can see more. The target seems bigger because it's easier to shoot a bigger target, but all of your wobbles and the fact that you're standing on something that's unstable just makes all that worse. And so I saw people just like chasing around the target because their wobbles were so big, they were so zoomed in. It's like you'll feel steadier if you zoom back, and you don't have to be at 1x, but over zooming can be a big problem for you on close targets as well, especially if you're unstable. If you're stable, who cares? But I saw people using too much magnification and then being surprised they weren't getting hits because they were chasing, trying to catch it as they were wobbling all around it. So another idea there.
Yeah, and even stable, too much magnification. If you have more than you need, you've got transitions can be a little bit slower. So again, really just use as much magnification as you need, and no more. Anything else to add to that, Mark, before we move on?
This is another general one. If we're giving any sort of value out of these podcasts, practice, like even just the day before, getting in and out of your sling. I see people are so tangled up in slings, and especially where you have to be wearing it before the shooting position. People get over there and they're like, they have it too tight, or they have it in the wrong position. So when they go to bring up the gun, the sling is the wrong direction, or the sling is in their face because it's on the wrong side of the stock. And people fighting slings eats up a lot of time, and that's not something that takes a lot of practice. You got to dry fire for 10,000 hours, but you can mess around with the sling for like 10 minutes the week before a match, and you probably won't be tangled up in it. So just a basic thing to spend a little time on will save you a lot of time on a stage.
Yep, absolutely. All right, moving on. So that was stage 3. Now
Fire
after
flip.
stage, oh yes. Plus challenge was they had a pretty good size like tractor tire, and you had to flip it 10 times. I think they did the same, similar last year. It's not too bad. I mean, it'll wear you out. It's heavy enough. It takes a little bit of effort to get it, to get it up off the ground. So after that, you went into the down a steep hill. I'm actually glad we were able to use this. There were some concerns because part of the property line for the range is the Kentucky River. Well, the weeks leading up to this, there was tons of rain, flooding in Kentucky. The river was crested over as of Monday or Tuesday before the match. And but it had gone down enough, so you go down into the bottom part, and then you get the Stairway to Heaven. Every year, Alan finds a even worse part of the terrain for you to climb up. This year was no exception. It was very, very steep, and at the very top, there was actually some like rock outcroppings that made some waist height, and for me, almost waist height steps. That was probably the hardest part. When you've got, I've got a rifle, I've got 35-pound ruck plus ammo, or 35-pound ruck plus ammo. You really have to concentrate when you're doing things like that, because if I were to fall trying to get up one of those steps, I'm going to fall a good deal down the hill before, if I'm lucky and something stops me. So, did you have something to add, Mike?
Oh, so I was going to say, going down, they had another cache item, and a lot of people blew past this because it was kind of right in these like stone steps that were shelved. And so you had a couple drops, and right kind of sitting on one of the shelves to the right, they had just one or two small red pieces of tape there was a bucket with, I believe it was glow sticks or something in there, like the ones you can make into like bracelets and stuff. And so a lot of people were all amped up out of 3. I'm getting ready to go down this big steep hill. I'm going to try to make up as much time as I can without going ass out of over apple cart down to the bottom of this drop. So a ton of people blew past that. So just another thing of, it's easy to get running in the zone. Maybe you got your headphones on. You're crushing this part of the run, but you don't want to crush it so bad you lose 30 minutes due to missing a cash item. And, it doesn't matter if it's a cash item or Legion and it's intel. A lot of times it's a small trade-off. Just make sure you got what you need instead of just smoking the course. But yeah, that's all I got for that. And yeah, the climb out sucked as usual. Just one foot in front of the other. Look up because of the snow and mud. Plan your route. Plan, maybe the next 20 feet in front of you, so you don't find yourself someplace where you don't have anything to grab if you're going over backwards, especially guys carrying rucks, and even normal kit. Your balance point isn't where you're used to. You're climbing terrain and stuff, and I mean that'll put you about on your hands and knees. So just be safe, plan your routes.
Yeah, and you guys, they're going to have to point out the cash items. I've never missed a cash item at Heartbreak, and I missed every one of them except for the last one this year. So a lot of that was, as Mark was saying, there was snow on the ground with the ruck and like everything going on. I was, especially going down the hills and going up, I was very concentrated on where I was stepping more so than most matches. I tend to be a pretty heads up moving through the woods, and this year that was not the case. So yeah, I missed them all. Again,
I missed that one. So I missed that one too, and I wasn't going fast, but it was exactly like you said. It was hazardous going down because we're in 3 inches of snow and it's icy. So I was like placing every foot and like looking at the ground the whole time. And so I was just so zoned in on that it wasn't a speed issue. It was a don't fall down this mountain kind of issue.
Yeah, yeah. So again, different than this year, you came out of that big climb and then a little bit more of an angle climb up and straight into the obstacle course. So, and you kind of did the obstacle course backwards this year. So the first thing you came into was this kind of like, I guess it's a tank. It's almost like it's got a tube, and then there's a door that flops open. And every other year I've done this, climb in through the tube into the main area, push open the door, and come out the top. When I got up there, the guy told me to go in through the top and down and out through the tube.
Good job, Michael.
So I did that both times I went through the O course. The problem with that is that there was a cache item inside that tube, which they've never had one in there before. They've had one other one on the obstacle course, but it was a pretty obvious one because it was on top of a ladder. But going down that way and coming across, I didn't see it. Whereas if I would have been crawling in, I would have been facing it. So I completely missed that one.
And as someone that found that, let me explain. It wasn't in the tube.
So no. It was in the box area.
When Ryan went in, he would have been probably swinging his feet in where the tube would have gone to his either right, 3 o'clock, or he would have been facing the tube at his 12. Either way, the bucket was into the corner of the box, and it would have been behind him at either his, if he was dropping down facing the tube, it would have been at his like 4:30, and if it would have been at the tube immediate to his right, the bucket would have been back here at his like 7 o'clock. So unless he did a 360, he was never going to see it. When I got to that obstacle, they had me go in through the black tube and up through the top. And so I remember, shoving my pack, crawling up over it, and being like, huh, and peeked inside and found the cache item. But there was still people that once they redirected them to going through the tube and out the top of the tank, there were still people going right by it and not getting that stuff. They were just caught up in the moment of, I got to get up and out of this box.
Wait, so was that for everybody on competitor day? Did it tube first? Because I did it over the top and then down out.
Yeah.
So
I think early on they were having us do it the way that me and you did it, and then Mike, because of how long it took some of the people out in the course, me being the somebody, Mike didn't go till competitors day. So I think it sounds like from talking to some other things, certain things happened on RO day, and then they were run a little bit differently on competitor day. Unfortunately, that's kind of what happens. I don't know that we need to get caught up on it, but
Yeah.
that is just kind of the nature of it.
Right. That's not a big deal.
Ryan, the ROs might have had a little bit of a disadvantage because the direction they entered the tank trap and exited. But then the way that I was told to run the slack line was different than how the ROs ended up running it. And was it a major time advantage? It probably wasn't so much a time advantage, but I was hearing of
energy
guys on
expenditures.
competitor day that if their gear touched like the ground, like their foot touched the ground or their back or something, they're making them do burpees. And I never heard of anyone having to do burpees if they hit the ground on RO day. So that's kind of, the tough thing of the course is not fully manned on RO day. And so the guy that runs the O course, the O course is his baby, he was out there for competitor day. So he was going to have everyone do what he envisioned for the course on competitor day versus the ROs. If there was no one there that really was there for the initial planning and envisioning of that obstacle and how it was going to be run, they're just making their best guess. I think this is how it's supposed to be run. The blessing that curses RO day is sometimes the ROs do a heck of a lot more work, or they get dropped in through an obstacle in such a way that gives them a visual disadvantage. And then every once in a while, there might be something that slides a little bit in their favor. Generally, in the grand scheme of things, this was the first match that I've run on competitor day in probably 5 years. It's been a while. I've really been doing a lot of the ROing stuff. And I forgot how much easier it is to run on competitor day than RO day. I would probably give another 15% difficulty running on RO day. Just the path isn't easy to follow. The stage briefs are rougher. If you're shooting in brush, there's more brush up around the targets that's been mowed down after RO day. So yeah, just one of those things.
Trails beaten down more. I mean,
Holy smokes, yeah.
Yeah, there's just a variety of things that are different between them. Most match directors do a pretty good job of keeping it as consistent as they can, but there's always differences. So we'll kind of move on. As Mike was saying, right after that, there's a slack line. You had to get you and your gear across. As he said, it was run a little bit differently, maybe day to day. After the slack line, you had was that
step overs?
Oh, yeah, they had a bunch of 55-gallon drums that you got to step over. After those, you get to the Mark's favorite ones, right? The tires.
Yep.
And think tractor trailer tire. That's basically tied to on the ground in lines, and you have to weave your gear and yourself in and out of them. So throw your gun, throw your gear through, climb through. Throw your gun, throw your gear through, climb through the other direction. And there's like 5 or 6 of those you just kind of like weave in and out of. After that, there is a very, very tall wall that you climb over, probably 12 feet at least, 12, 15 feet.
I put it 15.
Like a Jacob's ladder. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not a flush wall, but like a big steps, like 2 foot ladder steps.
2x6 strung between poles.
After that, you go through up a tube, like a plastic tube, which is always really hell on my knees. And then if you were doing the regular division, that's where you're done. You're all finished. If you like abuse, and you're doing the plus, you get to do the other half. So one of the worst ones is the tire wall. So think of like what we're saying, a Jacob's ladder type, just a big ladder, but you have a bunch of tires put together that you have to climb up. And then there's actually like a netting, a tube you had to go up, and then a netting, or in that case, go around. After you get over that, the tube and all that, which the tube teeter-totters while you're on it, you have two 55-gallon drums that have like a handle that you have to lift and move from one space to the next. And then there's a low crawl, which is kind of short. A smaller wall with like a 2x4 going across it, leaving a little opening. And then a longer low crawl, and then another wall. So nothing crazy, but I can tell you from lugging like a 30-pound pack, rifle, pistol, all that like one full trip through it really just wears you down. And it's really, really hard to make any kind of speed or momentum, dragging rocks through and stuff like, I usually have a daisy chain, and you're crawling and you're yanking it behind you, and you got your rifle in front of you trying to keep it out of the mud. On RO day, the low crawls weren't muddy yet, but they had basically like stalagmites all along it. Like just ice had been frozen in like points. So as you're crawling through, you're crawling on top of sharp ice. So that kind of sucked.
And him describing it, yeah, so Ryan describing it as stalagmites, like, little pokes of ice that as the first person goes through, they're just going to break all those off and they'll be smooth. No, they did not break. They were jagged the entire time. The ground was frozen uneven with rocks and stuff through it. We debated, is it going to be better or worse if the ground is frozen or muddy under there? And I'm thinking muddy was better than frozen. Frozen was very miserable.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
frozen. I was the second runner out on competitor day. John Hutt, our friend, was the first runner out, and it was still frozen when I went through. And oh my gosh, I've gone through when it's muddy a whole bunch, and your knees might not like it, but I tell you what, my 31-year-old young spry knees did not like that frozen tundra one bit. Like I was limping the next day. I was getting, people were chuckling and laughing at me, but it took for a day or two for my knees to start working again correctly after this heartbreak.
Yeah, I still have scabs on my shins. Every time when I was climbing through there, every time I'd go to yank my rucksack behind me, I'd pull too hard and it would just slam the plastic of the frame right into my knee or into my shins. So like I'm pretty sure I still have freaking scabs on my knees from that. But basically there's like a mesh cloth over top of this. So if you just imagine as it rains and the rain drips through there and freezes underneath, you just got all these tall areas. So you get done with that stage and you move, or the half of that or the whole thing, and you move to me and Mike's stage 4. This was a fairly straightforward stage, but kind of long. You had rifle where you shot 2 different targets in one corner, 2 different in another, and you were shooting through. On one side there was a table, and the other side there was a port on a barricade. And then in the middle there was another table. So you had 3 positions, 4 targets from each position. So 4, 4, 4, whichever direction you wanted. Once you were done, you grounded your rifle on the table and you went forward and you shot all of those targets with pistol. And then you had to rotate to the side and shoot a spinner and get it to spin over. I said 2 in each. I think there was more than that. Was there?
There's one in the middle. There's 2 in the corners and one in the middle.
It was 5
Yeah,
hits from each position
yeah,
plus your
yeah.
HVT.
So 5, 10, 15. Then you run forward with your pistol. Not a difficult stage. The spinner was a little bit heavy, but like just to get spinning, to get it started, but it was very doable. I mean, I was shooting 115 grains. They're not very hot ammo. It's not very spicy, and I got it to spin just fine. Mike, what do you want to add about that stage?
That stage was a challenge for the competitors and a little bit of a challenge for the ROs. The steel rifle target was hanging on fire hose, which new fire hose with new hardware generally holds up. The hardware was a little rough shape. The fire hose was pretty well used. And so the competitors were having to deal with a lot of uh, either a target would fall off on them mid stage or they came in and the stage brief tells you, you know, you need 5 hits, but we've only got 4 targets hanging out there. So you're going to have to go back and pick one up, but you can't double tap one. So there was a little bit of chaos that was brought in just because the way the targets were presented. But that was one of those stages that you wanted to think about how you're going to move because the ROs on RO day, we decided, well, we're going to let the shooters decide if they want to move through the rifle positions, like in a left to right or a right to left fashion. So we started everyone kind of in the middle of the array and let them decide where they're going to go. And our thought was that is for safety reason, it's generally best if a right-handed rifle man moves left to right across the stage. So then their long guns pointed down range as they move. If you have a lefty, um, you know, then they're not shoehorned into trying to do a movement when their gun would naturally be slung this way. So we gave some options. It was interesting to see even some right-handed people that are really good shooters choose to run it in the less efficient way. And because they were very quick on getting on target, it kind of helped make up for their inefficiency getting in and out of positions because of their choice. But just something to think about is you're given options by ROs on how to shoot a stage, break it down in your mind and the safest way to do it. Um, Another thing is the way that stage was where you had to run up and finish pistol. We had a lot of people that they ran all the way up there and they pull a mag out. Or sorry, no, they started loaded pistol. But they ran all the way up there and then undid their retention and drew from a standing. And you had to engage from a certain position, but there's nothing that said you couldn't draw on your way up. So, like for me, I knew it was pretty icy, so I went ahead and ran until I was probably within like 12 or 15 feet of the shooting box, and that's when I executed my draw. So then, as I'm coming in and slowing down and stepping into there, I'm actually starting to press out. I'm not wasting any time of now I'm in the box. Now I'm going to draw and present. And you saw most of the efficient shooters that had top times, guys like Ben and Luke, some of these really good shooters, they were presenting the gun onto the target as they stepped into that final position. So again, just an efficiency note. Another thing is spinners eat ammo. Uh, Not very many people are shooting pistol spinners now. There's not a lot of outlaw pistol stuff right now. 3-gun, saw some of that. 3-gun's not as large as it used to be. So when you're coming into something like that, make sure to give yourself the best chance of getting it over because we saw so many people go to emergency slide lock reload because they shot the pistol plates, the ones that you had to shoot with the rifle, you shot them again when you got in a position. So they had to engage 5 targets plus however many misses they had on those targets. And so even if they're running a 20-round magazine, now they're moving in with maybe 12 rounds in their magazine. And now I'm going to try to get a spinner moving. So if you're a whiz bang USPSA guy or a really experienced shooter, you know, like one of our friends, Ben, he decided not to do a reload, and he got the spinner over. I watched somebody get the spinner over on their last round. So talk about lucky. That might have been Daniel. But for me, as a slightly more cautious, my goal is I want to try to stay in the top 5 shooters on every stage if I can. For me, it made sense to, as I go and transition onto the spinner, I'm going to put in a fresh magazine and attack that spinner with a full capacity. So that's one thing, is making sure when you're coming onto a spinner, you set yourself up for success with your ammo loadout. And then also, panic fire does not get spinners over. Aimed rounds get spinners over. Generally, if you have the ability and you're a good enough shooter, maybe double the top, double the bottom, and then single hit, double, whatever you can get your hits. But if you're starting to outrun your headlights, back it down. It's better to get single than it is to get, 2, miss 4, 1, miss 5. You're not going to get it over. And so one thing to consider too is, if you're not a hot pistol shooter and you're shooting something like Heartbreak, when you have a fair amount of pistol ahead, know when to stop. There's definitely people that ran out of pistol ammo at Heartbreak this year, and it's because they didn't call their limits. So set yourself up for success, but also know when to call it. Save your ammo on some other stage where you could potentially be penalty free, because you don't want to eat the penalty for not getting something like a spinner and not getting something you could have successfully done because you burned all your ammo loadout. So shoot smart.
Yeah, you can get a spinner to spin just shooting the bottom plate too. I mean, it's not going to be fast for you, but if every time that thing comes, you time it right and you hit that bottom plate square, it'll go over. Mark, anything before we move on?
No, just if you have a chance with your rifle, brace it on something. Every one of those positions, you could use the legs of the table, you could use the port. I saw people crouching underneath those tables trying to just hold still. And it's like, if you ever have the chance to brace. So that'd be the only thing to add.
Yep. The double kneel, I think for most people, double kneeling from the 2 lower positions was definitely the more stable position. I think one of them was a little lower, and I kind of did like a weird prone, and I got my hits pretty quick. It ended up being all right, but it takes a little bit longer to get up from that. But yeah, some kind of resting is what you want to do. You don't want to just be down on the ground trying to hold your gun steady. So
and
after
weird
that,
prone was a good thing in that position. I'll make this really quick. So sometimes when you're shooting ports, and that was a prime example, if you try to brace off the left leg, you'd be able to hit all the targets on one side of the array and not the other. If you went to the other side of that table leg and braced against there, same problem. You could hit one side of the array and not the other. So accepting a mildly awkward prone in the center allowed you to hit the entire array without having to reposition your body. So that's something that you're probably not going to pick up on the stage brief in looking at something like that unless you've got a lot of experience. So that's where, hey, if you're out banging around with your 22 or something, take a step stool, throw some weird stuff together and just practice bracing, and, maybe set up some sort of array so you can get in and diagnose positions quickly while you're getting in and out of them.
Yeah, the middle one was a little bit lower. I may have been able to double kneel and like get low enough, but I kind of had concerns just from looking at it, not being able to dry fire it. So I basically just did like a kneeling or a prone where I was up on one arm and then resting on that, and then that was still fairly stable. So so once you leave that, you go through the obstacle course. If you're doing the regular, you do the second half that we had gone through. And if you are or the plus, you do the whole thing again. Once you did that, and that one, the plus challenge was, we almost missed that. Stage 4, the plus challenge was squats with 20 squats with a concrete block above your head. So the easiest way was just hold a concrete block on your head, do your 20 squats, be done with it. I know on competitor day when I was there, Mike, you need to mute yourself. You're kind of loud. When I was running on competitor day, you were not getting away with crappy squats. Mike did one squat at first. His first squat was not like below the hip or the knee crease, and it was not Mike. And I said, you need to get down lower, because me and Mike work out together. I know he can do a good squat. We've worked on squat for him. And he's like, oh, my belt, blah, blah, blah. Spread your legs a little bit and actually squat correctly. His other ones after that, he squatted perfectly fine. He had no issues with it. So you were going to do a correct squat. None of this like cheater, So those knees got to go 90 degrees. That's the moral of the story. So other half of the obstacle course or whole thing, when you got to stage 5, first thing you did, this has been here the last 2 years, they've got this big ass rope. 2-inch diameter rope probably, and a little pulley, and all of it is on one end. You've got to pull it all through to the other end. So basically you're grabbing it, you're pulling and you're pulling and you're pulling. I grabbed it and walked and kind of threw it. I don't know how much rope is there. There's a lot of it. It takes you a while.
It's over 80 feet.
Is it? Yeah,
it
easily.
Might be 100, but it's over 80.
Yeah. So when you got to shoot the stage, they kind of had a similar theme on this last year. They have a simulated mortar, so like a metal mortar in a tube, and on the beep you would drop that mortar in. They got a cutout at the bottom, so you pick it up, drop it in again. You had to do that 3 times, and then you had like a ray or two in one bay, because you're like in the middle of 2 bays, and then an array or 2 in the other one. I don't remember all the specifics on this one, but so you shoot some rifle here. 4 and 4. So you, yeah, it sounds right. You shoot 4 here, you rotate over, almost 90 degrees, and shoot 4 in this other one. Ground your rifle, grab the mortar again, do that again. You went through that progression 2 or 3 times. And then once you were done with rifle, you grounded the rifle. I completely forgot. Yeah, after the rifle part, did you do you had to do the tourniquet right off the bat, didn't you?
No, it was after the first set of rifle. I think it was 3 mortar, rifle, tourniquet, 3 more mortar, rifle, 3 more mortar, then pistol.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. So you had to put a tourniquet on yourself, wrap it around, once or twice. And yeah, and then the pistol, you had to shoot one-handed with whatever, you had your weak hand tourniqueted. You had to shoot strong hand, one-handed on like 6 or 7, 8 pieces of steel. That ended up being one of my better stages. Fairly straightforward. Just do your thing. Mike, anything to add about that?
Yeah, watch the meat of the palm of your hand when you're dropping a mortar in the tube. Pinching in there doesn't feel too good with their heavy simulator. That's definitely one of the arrays that it's very easy to rush your rifle work and start dropping shots because it feels like the targets are semi-generous. But just shoot clean. And but yeah, there's no real secret sauce to that kind of stage. It's just trying to execute without a bunch of wasted movement and shoot fast, don't miss.
That's day 1 of mortar school, Mike. You hang and skin the tube. You never get your hands stuck there. Come on.
I've spent so much time as a mortarman there.
Yes.
I think I
Last
probably played a little less Call of Duty than you, Mark.
Right.
last
No,
last year they got you because when you weren't looking, they actually poured water inside the bottom of the mortar tube so that you're like you drop it in and you're getting your face down there ready to grab it and pull it out, and it would just splash water all over your face. So it only took one drop to realize that you didn't want to look at it. You wanted to turn your head away. And
again, day one of mortar school. Skin it and look away. You gotta protect those ears. Come on.
well, yeah, nothing was going off here. So anything you want to add to that, Mark, before we move on?
No, just that I ran that stage like Call of Duty and just had fun with it and yelled out fire mission and just had a good time. I had a crappy time because I was screwing around, but that was one of my favorite ones to shoot.
That's all. That's all right. So after this, you've got the Miracle Mile. I think it was a little bit less than the mile this year.
Miracle Mile was after 4. You did Miracle Mile into the second half of the obstacle course.
Oh, yeah, you did. I'm sorry, I missed that. Yeah, so, yeah, Miracle Mile. Yeah, 4 Miracle Mile obstacle course, and then the stage. After this stage, you went off into the woods. We went to kind of a new area. So you were done with rifle at this point, which was good because most people that have run and guns will do this. You're getting like halfway, 3/4 of the way through the match, and you start looking at your ammo, and you start going, I don't have like a mag per stage like I would really like. So I had some rifle ammo, but not as much as I'd like. And we didn't know what was what, Figured the last stage was probably pistol only, just knowing shooting the match before. But you headed off through the woods for a little bit, and then you came on to I think it's their black powder range, and pistol only stage. So on the start beep, you had, I think there was only 5 targets out there, but they were a good 35 to 50 yards, something like that. Does that
2
sound
were a little
accurate?
closer. Yeah, I think 2 were a
Yeah.
little closer at maybe 20-ish, and then the other 3 were at like 35, maybe.
Yeah, and not very big targets. So these were, I mean, they're not like, we're not shooting little tiny, but they were definitely far out, and definitely not like a full size IPSC, not even a half, not even like a C zone.
No, probably 8-inch or 10-inch plates.
Yeah, 8-10 inch plates, and 5 of those from standing, 5 of those from prone. So very. If you got good fundamentals, it's not a horribly hard stage, but it's not an easy stage either. So I survived on this stage. I don't have anything to add. Mike, you got anything?
Yeah, so this is another, like, you just need to understand what your zero is with your pistol. Because if you zero really close, you're going to be holding pretty far under by the time you're out there at like 50 yards. So, like, yeah, I don't know if there's a right answer when it comes to zero distance on a pistol. I personally like 25 yards. So then, like, at those far targets, I literally was just putting my dot at the bottom edge, and I was able to get a solid impact. And this is another one, like, setting yourself up mentally for success. So when I dropped my ruck to shoot, I dropped it in such a way that when I went prone, I could rest my forearms off the top of my ruck and use that as
Same.
a steady, soft shooting position to engage the long range. Was it the fastest time? No, but it didn't hurt me at all. So, yeah, those little pre-planning thoughts when you're reading the brief and you're mentally picturing how am I going to shoot this stage. Think of what can I do to help myself out.
Yep, that was the only stage that made me. Normally, when you got up there, you could just drop. When it was time for you to shoot, you could just drop your ruck to the side. That was the only one that made me start with my ruck, and you didn't have to have it on; just had to be off the ground. So I did the same thing as Mike. Just held it in my hand. On the beep, I just tossed it right where I was going to want to lay prone, and then use that afterwards. Mark, anything to add?
I shot that one well. I had a decent time, but I know what kept me from being better is getting into prone. And that's just not something I practice with a hot pistol, like getting down under your belly. And I'm sure more athletic people just put a hand down and did a burpee. And I was like an old man just laying down on the ground to take a rest and shoot some targets. So that's one thing that I could practice. You know, we talk about go out and do this. Like I never practice getting prone with the pistol, so I need to do that as a way to get better.
Yeah, I mean, kick your feet out, put one hand down, pistol out in front of you, and just drop it like it's hot. So, all right. So after that, you went through a little bit of woods, but you basically came out onto a road. You walked along the road for a little bit. Depending on what time of day, you avoided the skunk that was prowling up and down it, trying to get people. As you came into the last area, this is the only one I got. So coming into the last area, they had a sign saying, like around the corner or something, stage 8, and ask the ROs for your last shot. So I saw that, read it, was like, okay, cool. I had kind of been chasing someone at this point, getting a little bit closer. So I, because the last we missed a challenge. That last challenge was burpees. So like 10 or 20 burpees, something like that. I think it was 20 burpees. So anyways, because I got the only times I really got passed on the course. I didn't get passed on the course. I got passed at stages while I was doing the extra challenges. So in that case, someone passed me. I kind of kept on them and got in this last stage behind them. So when I got there and they explained the stage, I said, well, what about this last shot? And they said, just hold on to that. We'll go back to that. So this stage, you had a concrete block that you had to hold off the ground. You had a single piece of steel at 15 yards.
You didn't have to hold it off the ground. You just had to shoot. You only had one shot to get your hit and then move the brick with you. And you could set it back down. You didn't have to hold it.
Oh God, I held it the whole time. So, or maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. It's been a while since it's been quite a few days. So yeah, move the brick from back and forth, make your shot. You had to get 6 shots, right, to clear the stage, and you had 60 seconds. So ideally, if you go 1 for 1 and you're moving fairly quick, it's a fairly quick stage because the boxes were only 5-10 feet apart from each other. It wasn't like it was going real far.
Holding the brick was definitely the fastest way to do it, but the target was far enough away and you didn't get any makeups that shooting it one-handed, it was definitely faster to set it down and take a good shot.
You did get makeups. You did get makeups. It just would cost you a lot of time. Yeah.
Right. So if you were the absolute best pistol shooter, holding the brick, shooting it one-handed would have been the fastest way to do it. But it was a far enough target that setting the brick down was the way to go.
Yeah. Whatever I did was not the fastest way because I was tired enough and I did poorly on that stage. So yeah, it wasn't my finest pistol work. So I don't have anything much to add. Mike, you got something to add on that one?
I got to it and they told me the gist of it and how it was supposed to be shot. And right away I knew that somebody with more pistol, probably USPSA skills, was probably going to beat me. And so I resigned myself to this for me is just a shoot clean game. So I just got on, prepped the trigger to the wall, broke the shot, grabbed it. The block went to the next, dropped it, prepped the trigger to the wall, broke it, and just went back and forth and went 1 for 1. I think that later reviewing the scores, there was a couple guys that burned it down, that shot it pretty quickly. But those of us that just got our hits consistently we weren't that far behind them. And then the people that started dropping and not going 1-for-1, there was a massive drop off after the clean shooter plateau. So that's another one where like you have to balance. Like, I'm pretty sure the person that had top score on that might have been a hero or zero, because he had already had bad enough luck on some previous stages. He didn't have anything to lose. Um, and so you're always going to potentially have someone that comes into a stage like that is going to give it a hero or zero attempt. And, maybe they had two bad stages and they're just like, if I don't go pedal to the metal, I don't have any chance of any kind of good finish. Someone like me, my bread and butter is generally in the consistency. So I don't think I won any stages at Heartbreak this year, but I'm pretty sure that I generally stayed like within the top 10 shooters, if not top 5 on a lot of stages. And so coming into there, it didn't pay to hero or zero, it paid to just shoot clean. So that's kind of what I did. And then got my shot glass and did some man
Well,
makers.
they didn't. Yeah, so that's what the last shot was. If you remember to ask them, the cash item was a little Heartbreak shot glass, which is really cool. And then as Mike said, it was 10 man makers, 10 or 20 man makers. I want to say
Burpee
20,
with a
but
center block.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They weren't awful. I was definitely tired by that point, but there's better things I could be doing with my time than 20 man makers. So from that, it was a pretty straight shot back to the through a field, up and down. It's mostly uphill at that point, some rolling hills back up to the finish line. This year there was nothing. In past years they've had extra challenges. When you get back as a plus, you'd have something else to do. This year there really wasn't anything but weigh your ruck, make sure your ruck was the correct weight, and return in your cash items or lack thereof cash items in this case, for some of us. And that was Heartbreak 2025. It was a good one as always. Mike, any closing thoughts?
It was a lot of fun. Stages had your typical Heartbreak flair, where it was great action shooting. Everything was doable, maybe with a little bit of psychological bent for those that have never shot a spinner and they're seeing it for the first time. But the match directing crew there is phenomenal. Between Alan and Stewart and Mark and several of the other guys that put the Heartbreak event on, it would not be possible without their efforts that start long before the match actually happens. They're out there marking trails and figuring things out months ahead of time, and a very dedicated RO staff that comes back year after year and braves the cold conditions. It was single digits in the morning when people were going out to RO on RO day. So yeah, big thanks to everyone that worked so hard. Big thanks to the sponsors that put together an amazing prize table and were generous with their time and their goods. So yeah, thank you. I felt very fortunate to come back and be able to compete another year.
Yeah, you probably didn't. You probably don't have it, but tell them what you got off the prize table, because you were first place.
Uh,
Mike brought home the glory, the gold, and Heartbreak Plus. So he's been back and forth the last couple years. He's been right there at the top. I mean, like, I think even second place the last 2 years to some tough
so
competitors.
it's always me versus the Ranger bat guys. So I, I'll be first and then I'll be second. So yeah, this year I got first. The year before, my friend Mike out of Ranger Bat, he got first. The year before that, I got first. The year before that, I was another Ranger Bat guy. So yeah, it it just kind of goes back and forth. I guess we could pass around a trophy. And so yeah, I was very fortunate to pull off a first place against a pretty tough field of competitors. So Ryan's out there making me run hard for my money, and Jason Fox of Fox Jewelers has been very, very generous to the prize tables in the run and gun community uh, here in our neck of the woods, and donating to other matches like the Whiskey Hotel match. So I was very fortunate to pick up a really, really sweet Citizen watch off the prize table. Um, so I've enjoyed wearing that to work, and upping my bling from my General Garmin, which is my trusty running watch and fitness watch. But it's kind of fun to wear something shiny and pretty cool to work and stuff. So big thanks to the friend of the show, Jason Fox, for his generous donation to the multiple prize tables in multiple matches this year. So if you guys need anything for maybe it's watches, jewelry, I know that there's people from multiple states now bringing work into his little family-owned shop. So yeah, thanks, Jason. Really appreciate it.
Yep, Jason's good people, and it's a like a actual, I don't say actual jewelry store, but it's not a big box where you take your stuff and they send it off to some place that does the work. And he touches all the stuff that comes in there. He can make custom jewelry. I mean, he is a craftsman at what he does. Mark, what do you got to add as like your wrap up?
Just had a great match. Thanks to ROs. Thanks to the match directors. I didn't feel like I was going to die after this one. This was my comeback match, and I thought I was going to die after the first one, and I didn't die after this one, so I felt really good. So hopefully I can do it again.
Yeah, we loved having Mark down. We've been trying to get him to come back a couple years. I mean, he's been working out. The fitness, the improvements in your fitness are obviously showing, because that's where you see it, where you can finish a match and you don't feel like you're just completely dead. So we're proud of you for that. And next year he's going to be even faster and stronger. So
He's going to play in a man's category.
We're going to get him on
some sort of plus or some sort of weight.
Yeah.
We're not letting him off the hook. So
yeah. So yeah, my wrap up. It was a great match. I had a lot of fun. I was not my best performance here. I was very slow out there, but there's a whole host of reasons for that. This match is none of the shooting is. There's no crazy challenges in this. It's a very fundamental. If you have good fundamentals of your shooting, and you can hold those together when you get tired, the elevate, like we said, the terrain's really tough going. If you can hold it together, there's no crazy gotcha. There's no real mind games. It's just a good run and gun. So I definitely recommend you come out if you can. It sells out very, very quickly. I mean, every year I think it sells out in like a minute. So you kind of got to be on your game. I'm going to thank Crate Tactical. So I picked up a couple things in the past. I got this chest rig. I mean, all of this was one prize. So you got the main placard, comes with the dangler. You've got 2 expansion wings. I've got them on there. I'm not sure if I'm going to use them. I've not really run a lot of expansion rigs. And then your H harness. I think I won't use this all at once. I'm thinking about getting a zipper for it and using this for running, because it's got a zipper pocket, and for the main one, getting like a zipper pocket for the top. But I think it may be a good running chest rig. H harness. If a lot of people seem to like the H harnesses more than the X harness, I'm kind of indifferent about them. I've got both, and they both seem to work. Thank you, Crate Tactical. Mike donates a lot to prize tables. I think he had another event that weekend going on down in his neck of the woods. Usually he's there. Definitely miss seeing him. So check out Crate Tactical, because they sell really good steel. My wife has won steel from them. Me and my wife have both picked up out the front folding knives from them that we really like. I got this. I've bought, when I see him at matches, I'll try to buy like medical and stuff, anything I need that he sells, because he's just a good guy that does a lot of supporting for the sport. So Thanks for sticking with us. If you stuck in this far, like and subscribe to the show. Comment on it. Give us suggestions if you got stuff we want to hear. We see you guys out at matches. We know because you've come and talked to me and Mike and stuff, and talk about I think was it Luke? Is it Johnson? Is that his last name? Mm-hmm. He's like, oh yeah, he came up from Oklahoma. We were listening to your show the whole way up. I mean, I don't think I would want to listen to my voice that long. I'm positive. I spend all day with myself. I wouldn't want to, but we appreciate when people listen. We hope it's helping you guys. And maybe give us some feedback. Say hi to us at shows or matches, things that we're at about the show. We're always open for bourbon. So if you got a bottle of bourbon, bring it by and we'll help enjoy it with you. And if we have bourbon, we'll share it with you. And we probably do have bourbon if the guns have been put away and it's after the match. So yeah. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you out at a match.